Well, friends, an interesting name just popped up on the prosecution's witness list in Donald Trump's Georgia State RICO case. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. Well, friends, it looks like former Vice President Mike Pence will be called as a prosecution witness by District Attorney Fani Willis at Donald Trump's Georgia State RICO trial. Let's start with the new reporting. This from CNN. Headline: Georgia prosecutors put Mike Pence on their witness list in 2020 election subversion case against Trump. And that article begins: prosecutors in the Georgia election subversion case against former President Donald Trump have officially listed former Vice President Mike Pence as one of the witnesses who could be called to testify at trial, according to multiple sources familiar with the court documents that remain under seal. Pence, who has appeared before a federal grand jury as part of special counsel Jack Smith's probe into Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, has not been considered a major part of criminal proceedings in Georgia. Witness lists submitted by Fulton County prosecutors have not been made public and remain tightly held. Sources told CNN that the most recent version of the witness list, which was produced by prosecutors just days ago, included upward of 150 names. Among them is Pence. Pence could become a key witness as one of the few one-time Republican allies of the former president to strongly rebuke Trump's claims of widespread voter fraud in the Peach State. And this quote from Mike Pence, quote, "Despite what the former president and his allies have said for now more than 2.5 years and continue to insist, the Georgia election was not stolen, and I had no right to overturn the election on January 6th, Pence said at the National Conference of State Legislatures after Trump was indicted in August. Unlike in the federal probe, Pence has not testified under oath as part of the Georgia case, including before the special purpose grand jury that interviewed 75 witnesses in its investigation. Pence's name appearing on the witness list in Georgia, which has not been previously reported, is the first concrete sign that the Fulton County District Attorney's Office is preparing to put him on the stand. Pence has already signaled a willingness to testify as a witness in any federal trial. Okay, friends, so the first question you might have, based on that reporting, is, well, if Mike Pence didn't testify before the Georgia State grand jury investigating Donald Trump's crimes, what impact, if any, does that have on Mike Pence's ability to testify in the Georgia State RICO trial? Well, to answer that, let's just do a really quick Team Justice Law School class. So, one, you don't have to testify before the grand jury for you to be able to testify before the subsequent trial jury in the same matter. There's no requirement that a witness appear before the grand jury in order to be qualified to testify at trial. Now, let me hasten to add, prosecutors ordinarily want witnesses to appear before the grand jury. Why? Well, it gives prosecutors an opportunity to preview their testimony, see how useful it is, see how incriminating it is, see how exonerating, how helpful it might be to a particular defendant. But second, and perhaps even more importantly, prosecutors want to lock in the testimony of the witnesses before the grand jury. What do I mean by that? The grand jury is a secret proceeding by law. There is no judge in there, there's no defense attorney, and there's no defendant. Nobody staring down the witness who might be providing incriminating testimony about the crimes of the defendant. We try to foster an atmosphere where witnesses feel comfortable talking about really difficult subjects before the grand jury and being able to testify fully and truthfully and accurately without any pressure or any risk of, reprisals, then what I have had happen sometimes is the witness will take the stand at trial and they will spin the prosecutor. What does that mean? They'll start to back away from their grand jury testimony. In violent crime cases and murder cases, for example, sometimes that's because now the defendant, the person on trial for the murder, right, the person the witness is identifying as the killer, is now sitting in the courtroom staring down the witness. And I've had witnesses back away from their grand jury testimony. Oh, I really didn't see the murder. I don't want to identify anybody. Well, if they appeared before the grand jury and their testimony is locked in under oath, what does that give the prosecutor the opportunity to do? We can impeach the witness if they back away from their sworn testimony before the grand jury. We can say, you recall testifying before the grand jury on such and such a date, you were placed under oath, you swore to tell the truth, and you were asked the following question and you gave the following answer. And then you read the transcript to the witness, you can show the transcript to the witness, and you can impeach the witness and basically use that transcript to prove the crime, to prove that what the witness said under oath in the grand jury is the truthful account of what happened and what the witness knew. So, one, no, a witness doesn't have to appear before a grand jury in order to be able to testify at the subsequent trial in that case. But then there was something else raised in the article. Mike Pence testified before the federal grand jury, the grand jury in Washington, D.C., being conducted by Jack Smith, investigating Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. So the next logical question is, can the federal prosecutors share with the state court prosecutors the transcript of Mike Pence's federal testimony? And the answer is yes. There is a mechanism for federal prosecutors to be permitted to share grand jury transcripts, grand jury materials with other law enforcement agencies, including state court prosecutors. All we have to do, and I did this when I was a federal prosecutor, is file a motion with the chief judge in the jurisdiction where the federal grand jury sits, seeking permission to disclose, to share with a state court prosecutor the grand jury material, for example, the transcript of Mike Pence's testimony. And as long as the chief judge in that jurisdiction grants the motion and gives the prosecutors permission, then Jack Smith's team could provide Mike Pence's grand jury testimony in the federal case to District Attorney Fani Willis and her prosecutors down in Georgia, so they could use it in their case, and they could use it when they're presenting the testimony of Mike Pence in the RICO prosecution in Georgia. Okay, that is the end of our Team Justice Law School class. Let's turn back to the substance of what we learned in this article, and then let's talk about the incriminating evidence we know Mike Pence can present against Donald Trump. So how important is it that Mike Pence will be called as a witness based on the fact that he's included on the prosecution's witness list in the Georgia case? How important is it that he's going to testify against Donald Trump? Well, in any criminal case, you need to prove both a criminal act and criminal intent. Criminal intent has to accompany the criminal act. Well, some of what we know is that Donald Trump waged a relentless pressure campaign against Mike Pence, trying to get him, Pence, to join Trump's corrupt scheme, his conspiracy to try to wrongfully overturn the results of the presidential election. And we know that Mike Pence resisted. Mike Pence signaled to Donald Trump, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go into Congress on January 6th and refuse to certify the electoral vote that shows Joe Biden won. I'm not going to do it. But that relentless pressure campaign is sharply incriminating evidence of Donald Trump. That is some of his criminal conduct that Mike Pence can testify about. What about Donald Trump's criminal intent? Well, there is a really important evidentiary nugget that incriminates Donald Trump, and we learned about it from Mike Pence through both media interviews and in his book. And he said that when he made it clear to Donald Trump that he would not go along with Trump's corrupt scheme to overturn the results of the presidential election, Mike Pence tells us that Donald Trump said to him, "You know what your problem is, Mike? You're too honest." Oof. Evidentiary gold on the criminal intent front. Why do I say that? Because that statement proves that Donald Trump knew what he was asking Mike Pence to do called for dishonesty. So that is some devastating evidence that Mike Pence can, and I'm quite sure will, provide to that Georgia state jury, trial jury, once it's impaneled, and it will prove Donald Trump's criminal intent, his guilty state of mind, his corrupt mens rea, conclusively, certainly beyond a reasonable doubt. And then there's one more bit of information that we saw in this new reporting that I think really adds to the incriminating mix regarding Mike Pence's potential testimony against Donald Trump. And it is when Mike Pence said, "The Georgia election was not stolen, and I had no right to overturn the election on January 6th. Mike Pence can directly testify in his capacity as the person who was going to oversee the count of the electoral votes. The election in Georgia was not stolen." And yet Donald Trump still pressured him to refuse to count the electoral votes from Georgia and other battleground states. So all of that taken in aggregate, friends, that makes Mike Pence a sharply incriminating, deeply damaging witness against Donald Trump. So I was certainly heartened to see the new reporting that he has indeed been included on the prosecution's witness list down in Georgia, and he will apparently be called to testify about and against his former boss, Donald Trump. And that's a good thing, because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.